Hi, hello, and welcome. Let's talk about content again, and more importantly, about thinking about it differently. Because when you think about content in a different way, you do things differently. Differently to your peers, differently to your competitors, and differently in the eyes of your clients, which means you stand out from the crowd and you make people remember you. So today, let's talk about how we can use news content differently. Let's do this. First of all, I can guarantee that no matter who you are or what your business is, you don't use the news enough. I'm sure you read it, but I bet you don't use it to help you to generate content for your social media and blog posts. Whether you read the Daily Mail or the Telegraph, the Mirror or the Independent, or simply just watch the news channels online or on the TV, news is all around us. Even just scrolling through Twitter or LinkedIn, we can't avoid the news. Throw into that your own actual industry news, and there's enough content to shake a stick at. Even the tabloids have news stories that can be turned into content ideas. Let's look at how we can relate some of these news stories to our business without just literally talking about the story that's happening at the time. Let's think literally, not laterally. Let's think differently. Here are a few of the news headlines that caught my eye when I was putting this presentation together. Bear in mind, I've not read any of the stories. I'm just generating content ideas from the headlines. So let's go to this one. Psychologists having to talk to young offenders. Have you ever had to do your job in a different way? Write about that. It's because there aren't enough guards. Have you ever struggled to do your job because you haven't had the right info from a client, or because a different supplier hasn't done their bit yet? Taking it in a slightly different direction, how do you do your job or work differently to others in your industry? Do you have a different way of approaching things? Let's move on to herd of sheep found behaving. Sheep makes me think of people being the same. So what makes you stand out? Why don't you follow the crowd? What do you do that's different? Sheep taking drugs is a little bit unusual. Is there something unusual about you? Do you have an unusual way of working? Do you work differently? Behaving strangely reminds me a lot of people on social media. So maybe something about your thoughts on the current state of one or more of the social media platforms. Do you still love Twitter? Are you refusing to call it X? Are you loving Threads? Is Instagram your happy place? Build up your following on the platform of your choice by talking about it on other platforms and your blog. Let people know where they can find you. Grazing. Is your service one that people can graze on? Can they buy a little bit and come back when they need more? Do you offer a retainer option where they can buy a set amount of hours and then graze upon the rest through the month? Galaxy bars are now 10% smaller amid shrinkflation. So this one's kind of easy. Talk about how rising costs mean that people now get less for more, but not in your business offering. Or talk about why you've raised your prices, because getting less service for the same money is shrinkflation, but you're being transparent by giving the same service but for slightly more money. Reiterate one of your service packages. Make a point of saying that it's still the same price it was however many months ago. If you want to labour the point, point out that that makes it even more value for money right now, considering the way the costs are rising elsewhere. If all else fails, just talk about chocolate. Guaranteed interaction. This espionage one. If your competitors could spy on you, what would they be jealous of? A great one for bigging yourself up without overtly knocking down the competition. Fake heads makes me think of heads in jars in the future. What would future you say to current you? To that end, what would past you say to current you? Spies often portray themselves to be something they're not. Write about how you're always authentic in everything that you do. Don't sit there thinking everyone knows this already. It's the age of data. People need to be told these things, or they don't even think about them. Let's look at this poor woman dying after taking magic mushrooms to try and relieve pain. I promise I didn't just choose drug headlines. Okay, so this woman did X with the hope of getting Y result, but it went wrong. What have your clients sometimes done X, hoping to get a result of Y, but it didn't quite work out how they thought it would? How did you help them? Or how can you help them before they get to that point? Sometimes we think we need one thing when we actually need another. Do you have a service that allows people to stop, breathe, and analyse what they want? A one-to-one or a power hour, for example. Britain's vanishing pubs. I haven't read this story. I'm pretty sure it's manipulation of statistics. So 400 pubs may have closed, but I bet a percentage of them would have done anyway, and it's not because of whatever is in the headline. So what statistics or things are manipulated in your industry that you want to fight back against? I know a lot of coaches hate that we only use 10% of our brain stat. What's your version of that? Shout out about the things you see people touting everywhere, but know or believe to be untrue or misled. You don't have to name the people doing it, just put your opinion across. Going a little bit more literally with this, what's something that used to be done in your industry all the time that isn't anymore? A best practice that was once everywhere and is all but phased out now. If you have more than one of these, make a series. I reckon I've at least got a PBS season's worth of these on search engine optimization. So we've got the new blood test over here. Another stats one. Stats are always good if they can be backed up. So go and find some stats on things your clients would care about and write about them. What's new in your sphere? Write about that. We're talking about it's being made available in Britain, which means it's been available somewhere else before, I would imagine. What are people doing in other countries in your industry that could relate well here? Go and have a look. Go and find out. Go and find what people in America or different parts of Europe are doing in your industry and write about that. Dangerous dogs. A great one for talking about whether opinions are a good or a bad thing in your line of work. It's a polarizing subject. A brilliant way to get any interaction on any platform is to express an opinion. Don't be afraid to do it, but do be ready for the people that don't agree with you. This one's only to be approached with caution, and if you have a very thick skin, much like the dangerous dogs themselves, I would imagine. There's a trick, apparently, to restraining them. I don't know what it is, but is there a trick to something in your work that you can share with your readers without giving too much away? Write about that. And here we've got 5 things I did that were little known signs of ADHD. I had no idea until I was diagnosed at 30. So there's some really simple takeouts from this. Write something about things you didn't know before you were 30 or 40 or 50 or 60. Things you learned in the first 6 months of freelancing. Things you didn't find out until you worked for yourself. Sometimes these things write themselves. So there you go. That's 27 ideas. 26 if you ignore the chocolate one. Personally, I wouldn't ignore the chocolate one, but that's just me. I'm hoping this has helped you to look at news headlines and not to relate them to, and how to relate them to content ideas in a slightly different way. But here are a few do's and don'ts. Do scan the headlines. None of us have time to be reading reams of news stories that have no interest to us every day. The headlines should be enough to spark some ideas. Do let them spark ideas and give you ideas of things that you can relate to your businesses and services. And please, as we've done here, think differently. You don't have to be, and in most cases shouldn't be, literal. A headline about dangerous dogs doesn't have to lead to a post or a blog about XL bullies. Don't be afraid of writing an opinion piece, whether it's about something in the news or from an idea that has come from the news. Opinion pieces help people get to know you. Don't use emotive subject, unless you're willing to deal with whatever comes from that. Things such as mental health, politics, race matters and more can all evoke strong emotions and reactions. If you're not sure, steer clear. And don't be wanky. I've spoken in our membership group about not using things such as celebrity death to score business points, and I stand by it. There are a lot of things that shouldn't be mined for business content. If in doubt, just don't do it. So there you go. 26-ish ideas from a handful of headlines. Please do share with me any ideas it gives you. And if you liked this, I would of course love it if you could mention it and tag me on social media. Bye.